Hey Kev, let's follow this trail over here. This looks like there might be something waiting down there.
All right. Hey, wait a minute. Do you hear that?
Yeah, I thought it was just me. What the heck is that?
I don't know what that is. Whoa, do you smell that too?
That's unbelievable. Hey, look.
What the?
Hey, look, those branches are moving over there.
What the heck is that?
Holy cow, is that what I think it is? Look at that thing.
Oh my God.
It's a freaking Sasquatch. Welcome to the Bigfoot Terror in the Woods Sightings and Encounters podcast. I'm your host, W.J. Sheehan. Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to what is going to be yet another spectacular podcast. My name is W.J. Sheehan, author of the series of books, Bigfoot Terror in the Woods Sightings and Encounters, all of which are available at Amazon and in audio format, volumes 1 through 6 at Audible, iTunes, and Amazon. Christmas is coming. I'd like everybody out there to buy a book and stuff it in somebody's stocking somewhere. And now, without any further ado, my brother and co-host, KJ Sheehan. Kev, how are you?
I'm doing great. How about you, Bill?
Fantastic. We got a nor'easter sweeping through here today, and it's kind of gray and windy and rain flying around, and it's a little bit nutso.
Yeah, we got wind here, but it's kind of partly sunny. But last night, man, we got hit with the thunderstorm of thunderstorms. I thought I was like living in London during World War II and the Luftwaffe was coming in.
You didn't see any Rougarous flashing through the bay window, did you?
No, but to be honest, I wasn't looking out for them. That would have been all I needed, like the big flash of light and pointy ears on the second story looking in the window.
And a coyote's snout smiling at you.
Oh, hello.
Oh, my goodness. You know, that Louisiana lightning encounter that I named it, I can only imagine sitting in that living room with the little baby and the wife baking and whatnot and seeing that in the window would be like, what? You know, I was talking to a fellow and a couple of people over the past few days, and thanks, folks, for chiming in with us. All of you people out there know who you are that I've spoken to. It's always a pleasure to talk to the people and hear what's going on out there. And the accounts that are coming in, Kev, from people, sightings, and I always say, never think that what you saw or experienced is insignificant, because this is a connect-the-dots drawing. And what you've seen is more than likely what dozens or hundreds of other people have seen or experienced. And the one thing that's unusual, or not unusual now because it's happened so frequently, dogs react badly to the Bigfoot as well. Trained dogs, I've had two gentlemen, two listeners that called in, had trained dogs for hand commands, voice and hand commands, where the dogs either would not listen to them or they would just kind of back away when the odor or the sighting of the Bigfoot occurred. They don't want anything to do with this creature.
Yeah, well, we see that in some of the cryptid stories too, right? Where they say like the dog disappeared and then came back the next morning, you know, like after the event, whatever the event was.
Yeah, they ran away, or, you know, they just, they have a bad sense about this thing. And you know, what creeps me out about that, Kev, is, you know, most dogs, I mean, if they saw a cougar, they'd probably start yapping and maybe trying to get close to it, but not too close. Barking and barking and barking. But with these things, man, they just cower. their hair stands up, they back off, they heel down to the ground or walk back to the house. It's a very strange phenomena.
Yeah, well, I think the smarter dogs, when they see something like a cougar, they know it's something they shouldn't mess with. I know, like my Martha, a Labrador Retriever, I think if she saw a cougar and I was with her, she'd poke me in the side of the leg and look at me like, what the hell is that?
Yeah, yeah.
Should I bark at this or not?
Yeah.
Because I don't think I should.
Yeah. Should I take the antagonistic role or go eat a bone?
And Martha would also say, like, hey, if you got food in your pocket, I'm good. Like, I'm not going anywhere. Food trumps fear.
Yeah, so it's just interesting, you know.
Yeah, no, I agree.
People are seeing one of the listeners, his daughter had come across an intense odor while she was leaving their house, and then he experienced it many hours later as well. And, you know, he described it as being like fecal matter and skunk rolled into one.
Yeah, well, and don't forget the dogs, you know, their sense of smell is roughly 2,000 times better than our sense of smell.
Yeah.
From what I've read.
Yeah.
And that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And that's,
I mean, the cool story I heard about that, to bring the statistics to life, it's kind of like if you compared it to vision, if we could see a billboard, like when we're driving down the highway from about a mile away, for a dog's sense of smell, again, comparing it to vision, they could see a billboard that was 2,000 miles away.
yeah, I mean, that's nuts.
Just nuts.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and we can't relate to that, you know, but that's why you see dogs hanging their head out the window driving down the road in a car.
Oh, yeah, and also, like, you know, my dog, like, if I come walking in the house and I had something in my pocket, I mean, she comes right up to me, you know, even if it's not there anymore. Like, if there was a dog biscuit in my pocket, she comes up to me and pokes me right in the pocket where it was, like, to check, like, what's there?
Yeah,
I smell it.
It's amazing, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so thanks again to all of our listeners who contact us, and we encourage you to do the same. If you've seen something, say something. I call a lot of people. I talk to a lot of people, and it's always interesting and very fulfilling for me to hear what the people think of our podcast, Kev, the work we're doing, and just to have them become more of a part of it when I speak to them one-on-one, you know?
Oh, I love it. I love getting the mail from them, you know, where we're here talking to ourselves. You know, Bill and I, of course, we're not even in the same room. We're not in the same state. You know, we're 600 miles apart. So I'm kind of talking to him via Skype. And we know you're all out there because we see the great reviews. We get all of the mail. And it's just fantastic all the time to hear from you. You know, we heard this week people that are waiting at midnight on Saturday night for the next episode to drop to listen to it. I mean, that is so cool. And it's fantastic. So, yeah. Bill, we got a lot to talk about this week. I'm gonna open up, though, and tell people about we have a new tab on our website, BigfootTerrorInTheWoods.com. It's just called Fun Stuff on the main menu. And we've had a lot of mail coming in where, you know, we talked about me building these plastic model warbirds. I call it the COVID Air Force because I only started working on them after the shutdown. And so we had a lot of people asking for pictures of them. I have emailed out some of those pictures, and now I put some of them up on the website. And I'm just going to start putting stuff up there, you know, fun pictures, the ammo meme I put up there, stuff like that. So whenever I see something interesting during the week, or Bill sees something interesting during the week, or you tell us or send us something interesting, I'll be doing my best to put it up there in Fun Stuff. So come back there and take a look. And speaking of interesting stuff, in our last podcast, we talked about the three-sided mysterious obelisk that was discovered out in the middle of nowhere in the Utah desert. And that thing was Well, even though the Bureau of Land Management or whatever they're called, the folks that were out counting the bighorn sheep, they didn't actually release the location, people found out where it was. And there were hundreds of people going out there, and it's, Native American land and, kind of sacred area, and they were kind of destroying the place, to a certain extent, coming to see this thing, and then someone tore it down in the middle of the night. So, and I actually found a YouTube video of the folks who they videotaped themselves tearing it down and carting it away. So the folks that took it away, I assure you, they didn't look like aliens. It looked like me and Bill going out in the desert with a sledgehammer. But the really interesting thing is another obelisk just like it showed up in California, and another one showed up in Romania.
Yeah,
so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and to be continued, right? We don't know if it was a global plan to distribute these things and play with everybody's minds, or if something else is going on there.
Yeah, and I actually, this week was so busy in my primary job, I haven't had a chance to search around the corners of the internet to see if somebody's got something out there with plans for this obelisk. You know, hey, if you want to have some fun, here's the plans for this obelisk. Why don't you build one and try and put it somewhere?
Yeah, well, Kev, I have a confession. After work the other night, I had just seen the D.B. Cooper retake of, him skydiving with the money over at Washington.
Yeah.
So what I did was I paid somebody to take me in a 727 over to Romania, and I leaped out the rear staircase with the obelisk.
Well, I hope you stopped to see Vlad's castle while you were in Romania.
Oh, my goodness. So, what do we got today, bro, aside from our strange obelisk?
So other than the new tab and other than the mysterious obelisk, we're talking, I'll give you a hint, holy winged cryptids, Batman. We're going to talk about the Houston Batman.
Wow. Was there a robin accompanying the Houston Batman?
It might have been a robin like the bird accompanying him.
Oh, my God. The Houston Batman.
Yeah, have you heard of this one? This is an old one.
My recollection's correct, somewhere in the early part of the 50s?
Yes. 1953, June 18th. And there's some cool newspaper articles on it. I'll tell you a little bit about it, and then I'm going to read the newspaper article to you.
Okay.
So, from the Houston Chronicle on June 18th, 1953. But basically, it's June in Houston, and if any of our listeners have ever been to Houston, in June, boy, it's hot as Hades, super humid, and these folks were home, and it was so hot, I guess they couldn't sleep, and they were sitting out on their front porch, probably having a glass of lemonade or sweet tea, and they went and out on the front porch, and they're sitting there, and all of a sudden this dark shadow came across their yard, which is really interesting, right?
Yeah.
There's 2 a.m., and they saw this very tall, man-like figure in the pecan tree in their front yard with huge bat-like wings.
Wow, that is creepy. Sounds a lot like Mothman.
It is a little bit like Mothman, and it's and then it was encased in this halo of glowing light, and then the thing kind of flew away, almost like on a rocket pack or something. They don't talk about that, but they talk about the glow or the flames shooting away with it and across the sky.
Yeah, because you would think it's got wings, so it didn't flap away like a hawk.
No.
Wow, that's interesting.
So get this. I'm going to read you the article, okay? So it's not too long. So the headline is Houston residents cite Batman on tree perch in yard.
Huh.
Okay? So 5 persons, all of whom live in the same house, complained to police that they saw a combination of Superman and Captain Midnight perched in an oak tree outside their home earlier Thursday, and said he disappeared in the light of a mysterious rocket and a second aerial display. Police said that they were investigating the stories, but admitted they were not equipped to handle such phenomena as the 5 persons described. And Miss Hilda Walker, who is 23, accompanied by her husband, Lloyd, was the first to report the affair to the authorities. She says the shadow settled in a tree. It was about 2:30 a.m., and because it was so hot, her husband, the 14-year-old daughter of the landlady, and herself were all sitting on the porch when the entire yard seemed wrapped in a heavy shadow. All of a sudden, this shadow settled in a tree, she said. We all looked up and saw a Batman. He was balancing himself on a tree limb, and there was a dim gray light all around him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Freaking
right?
weird.
Weird.
Now,
and
Kev,
she said,
you said 2:30 a.m.?
A.m., yeah.
So this is early morning in the dark.
In the pitch dark.
I'm wondering how they see the shadow, though.
Well, maybe it just seemed like darkness, more darkness coming across the yard.
Yeah, that's what
I
I'm
can
thinking.
imagine it. If you're sitting out there and you can kind of, you're sitting on the porch, the light's probably not on, you're looking around, and, your vision starts to adjust, and then you would see greater darkness, of the type of a shadow.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. The greater darkness. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. And she said the creature was about 6.5 feet tall, wearing pants, quarter-length boots, and looked like a white man.
Wow, that is freaking bizarre.
Yeah. So get this. I could see him plainly and could see that he had big wings folded at his shoulders, she said.
Wow.
Walker and young Judy Myers, daughter of Mrs. Vivian Myers, agreed in all respects of the description.
Did they?
Then go ahead.
No, did they say he was wearing Levi's or Hager's?
I like the quarter-length boots. That's kind of what Batman was wearing, right?
Quarter-length boots with a brass buckle.
And the little cuff over the boots,
This is really a bizarre story, man.
I specialize in the bizarre and cryptids in the news. So then they go on to talk about the mysterious white light. They said after the Batman perched in the tree, a few moments while they sat paralyzed and watched, a mysterious white flame and smoke shot from behind, and a burning object like a flying paintbrush scooted across the horizon, and the Batman faded away from view. Whoa. So it's kind of like it kind of lit up a rocket and flew out of the tree and darted across the sky and disappeared.
If you just think about this for a second, Kev, if you really wanted to spend the night in a sanatorium, this would be a good way to begin the night. I mean, rockets.
Listen to this.
Smoke.
Listen to this. So Mrs. Myers said she got home just in time to see the flying paintbrush scoot across the sky. So that's the mother of the daughter.
Right.
And then another roomer, Roomer, so I guess this was some kind of like a rooming house, who was age 71, said he saw the weird shadowy fellow in the tree, though he said he merely went back and went to bed. The Walkers agreed it couldn't have been their imagination and said that they were so upset they were thinking about returning to a town called Bryan that they had moved away from only 3 months earlier. So super weird, right? I mean, 5 people, 2 of them related. Well, 2 related to one another. 2 of the other 5 related to one another, mother and daughter, husband and wife. And then this other guy who was like a tool and die maker that woke up and saw the thing and then actually, creeped out, but went back to sleep.
Yeah, and the fact that they described it as looking like a white man dressed in clothing with wings, sitting in a pecan tree, and then this glow around it, this gray glow, and then this thing just like bolts. I mean, the description. I get the paintbrush thing going into the distance, because if it was like
it makes sense. It reminded me of the Wicked Witch of the West from The Wizard of Oz when she flies away.
Yeah,
I'll get you, my fine pretty, and your little dog too.
Now we're gonna get letters from witches.
Very strange, and the fact that it made the headlines, it's just a weird thing, who the heck knows? I mean, it turns out it really didn't look like Mothman at all.
No, but there's some interesting stories about it. There's an interesting little YouTube video about it, which I'll post on with the podcast in under the episode description from a guy named Gerhard. His last name is Gerhard. He's a cryptid expert. And he does a little video. He talks about the story. It's pretty cool. And then he talks generally about the fact that, these flying humanoids, especially around the Texas area, date back many, many years. So apparently there's been sightings of them for many, many years leading up to this one in the 1950s. And this is also the time in the United States where, there were a lot of movies about, spaceship alien invaders, right? And it was kind of very serious Cold War going on, nuclear weapons, stuff like that, where people were generally kind of frightened. More so than today, I think, of the unknown. Today, we're just frightened of the unseen virus.
Yeah, and Kev, there are people out there. I disagree with it, by the way, as I say this, but there are people out there who say that scientifically the furor over fear and destruction and things posted in the news contributes to a mental state whereby people believe they've had these encounters. Do you buy into that?
I mean, I think it's heightened, but I don't think it causes it.
Right. I mean, it's
you know what I mean? It's kind of like if you had just read the account of Louisiana lightning, right? The dogman encounter in the thunderstorm.
Right.
Like literally before you went to sleep. And then it started lightning out. You might be more likely to, be frightened of something, right? Because it's fresh in your mind.
Yeah.
Kind of like you're more likely to dream about things after, dream about scary things if you watch a scary movie before you go to sleep, right?
Right, but like you or I, as much as we discuss Bigfoot, I don't go out in the backyard and imagine I see a 9-foot-tall, 1,200-pound hair-covered beast.
No, I mean, we talk about it, we read about it, we're watching the videos about it all the time, and I'm out there hiking on the weekends and stuff, and I haven't seen one.
Yeah, so that's why I say I really don't buy into it. The Louisiana lightning thing, you see a flash, you see an outline of what you perceive as being a tall, pointy-eared, snouted beast in the window. There was more to that, by the way. I'm not taking away from that encounter. They had footprints in the ground. But I get it, this idea of a flash, a shadow, an imagined thing, a heightened sense of fear, lightning, the lights go out, all of that stuff. But in general, I don't think people's mental state, unless it was induced by narcotics, would allow them to see some type of creature,
Yep, cool.
Wow, that's crazy, man.
Yeah, it's wild. The Batman,
Yeah.
Houston Batman.
Wow, that is...
I mean, it reminds me a little bit of Spring Heel Jack, too.
Yeah,
because it has that human characteristic.
Right.
Like, Mothman doesn't really have human characteristics, right? I mean, they say humanoid, flying humanoid, because it has 2 legs and stands upright.
Right.
But this is described as a white man. The 3/4 length boots. It sounds a lot like not just like him, but more human, kind of like the Spring Hill Jack stories.
Yeah.
In the UK.
Yeah, very bizarre, really bizarre
Super
stuff.
bizarre.
And to be continued.
Yeah.
By the way, if you're new to our podcast, in our first section, we can really talk about anything we want. The strange and the bizarre. We call it cryptids in the news and other oddities. And as you just heard from Kev, that was certainly under the other oddities category. But excellent, man. I'm really into this stuff.
Yeah, it's cool.
Now, speaking of Bigfoot, as I begin to tell you, our listeners, about this account that was told to me by Michael Silvers, I thought it worth mentioning that the activities and sighting which he had reported had actually occurred within miles of another witness's testimony that I had recorded. The only difference being the time frame of the 2 accounts. And this is what Michael had to say. My wife and I had made a move 2 years prior to the time when all of this had occurred. Coming from Buffalo, New York, to an area downstate near a town called Herkimer. I was a welder by trade, but as I was now 67, I had given up most of the bull work and had begun doing what I will call some custom design work, taking advantage of the access granted by the internet. I had come up with a design for a somewhat universal set of transmission and motor mounts, which I could use to fabricate for use with Mercedes, Rolls-Royces, and Jaguars to accommodate transplanting a Chevy V8 and tranny into any of the aforementioned vehicles. We had been living in this house for some 2 years, as I previously mentioned, and I had my shop set up in the barn located behind the house. I had put an exhaust system into the barn, along with a potbelly stove for heat. I also installed several double-hung windows to allow some light in, as well as to give me some air when needed. One of these windows was installed directly in the middle of my main fabrication bench, from which I could look over the grassy field behind the barn. We had come to know some of the people in our area, and most of them seemed to be fairly level-headed individuals. The reason why I mention this is soon to be evident. As time went on, a number of things began to go missing around the yard. I had certain tools, such as a fan rake and a broom, that I frequently used and would leave in specific places. But they had all gone missing. Even after replacing them, the replacements had disappeared as well. Knowing full well that I wasn't born with powder for a brain, and that my wife wouldn't so much as lift a broom or a rake, my thoughts were running in the direction that some mischievous local was messing with me. The problem was that the nearby properties were inhabited by people who were 60-plus years old, and any of the younger folks who were predominantly away in school or were hard-working individuals, none of which came to my mind as being capable of such chicanery. I had decided to put up a couple of trail cameras, mounting them high in the eaves of the house in the hope of catching the culprit in the act. It was one evening in October of 2006, with the sun having set hours before, that I was working on a jig while facing one of the double-hung windows in my shop. Now, whenever my welder hit the metal, a huge bright flash of bluish-white light illuminated the field through the window, much like the flash of lightning would. Even with my welder's hood down, if I allowed my eyes to shift slightly, I could see the field being lit up outside of the window by the flash. That night, I had several sets of my adapters to fill orders on, and I was going to be in the shop for at least a few hours. It must have been about 45 minutes into my work that I swore I saw a figure in the yard that was illuminated by the flash of the welder. Of course, I couldn't just keep the welder going with my hood on to keep looking. When I had stopped and flipped my hood up, all was dark again. I grabbed my flashlight and a shovel to use for defense if necessary and walked outside. I went behind the barn to see if anything was out there, and there wasn't. At the time, I had chalked it up to my imagination and left it alone. It was several weeks later, being the first week in November, that I went outside on a Saturday morning to do some cleanup of fallen branches, and my wheelbarrow wasn't there, or wasn't where I had left it. I habitually left it leaning against a large tree so that the water and or ice wouldn't accumulate in it, but it was gone. Now, understand me, please. One does not easily misplace a wheelbarrow and not know it. So I began to look around the property. I found the wheelbarrow about 300 feet from the house, sitting by the edge of my field, and one of the missing brooms was next to it on the ground. Unfortunately, none of the trail cameras were facing anywhere near to where this wheelbarrow had been leaning on the tree, and no pictures had been taken by either regardless. On that day, I moved everything and anything into the barn that could be carried off by hand, keeping my tools now under lock and key until I could get to the bottom of what was going on. If my recollection is correct, it was only 2 weeks later that I was once again out in the barn at night fabricating some adapters and facing the very same window on my workbench. After I had been working for about an hour, I saw a figure standing out in the field when the welding flash went off. The difference being that this time I continued to run a bead. It actually loused up my work in the process, but it allowed the light from the welder to stay on. As I looked up through the top of my shield's glass, I saw a huge Bigfoot watching what I was doing while standing in the field. I couldn't keep this bead going endlessly. And as I released the trigger, of course, everything went dark, including my being able to see the Bigfoot. I was certain as to what I had seen. It was a huge, hair-covered creature with long arms hanging away from what was an enormous V-shaped body. There was absolutely no mistaking it. Having now seen this beast, I was a little apprehensive about leaving the barn in the dark, and I phoned the police from my cell phone. All that I told them was that I saw someone standing in my yard through the window while I was welding, so he didn't say he saw a Bigfoot to them. When the trooper came, I opened the barn and walked out to greet him. At the same time, my wife had opened the back door of the house, wondering what the heck was going on. The trooper began to walk around the area outside the barn while I stayed with my wife. While he was inspecting the area, I whispered to my wife that I had seen a Bigfoot, and her eyes lit up in amazement like two saucers. When the trooper came back, he said he found nothing. I told him about the missing tools and the like, and shortly thereafter he left. The truth be told, having seen the monster, I was afraid to leave the barn, and I had called the police for safety purposes, not knowing what could have happened to me otherwise. As my wife and I were in the kitchen discussing what I saw, I told her that my belief was that this creature was being drawn into the yard by the flashing light coming from the welder. When I saw it, the beast seemed to be mesmerized by the light coming on and off as I welded. It was just standing there watching. During the days following all of this, I had painted the glass in the windows flat black. I had asked my wife to stand behind the barn as I welded to see if any light escaped, to which she said no. With the windows now blacked out and all of the yard tools and items being locked up, nothing further occurred. I also stopped welding in the barn at night for obvious reasons. When I saw this creature fully illuminated by the welder, it had to have been all of 8 feet tall. It was absolutely gigantic. As the welder's light lit up its face, I could see that it was heavily creased with wrinkles. I could see no teeth because its mouth was closed, but the face had some hair on it in the form of a scraggly beard. Its face also looked like that of an Australian Aborigine, with no offense against those folks whatsoever. Its bodily features were that of one muscle upon another, like that of a comic strip superhero or the like. It was that following spring, when the field behind our home was well soaked from the receding snow and the spring rains, that I was walking around behind the house. I was still unable to shake off what I had seen months before, when I came upon numerous large footprints, well formed in the soft grass. They were both deep and long, having obviously been made by this enormous creature. The footprints were at least 20 inches long, if not more, and very wide, with oddly shaped toes. They were formed in virtually a straight line, coming and going from the adjoining wood line which connected to my neighbor's lot, none of which were leading in the direction of our home, thank God. It was simply incredible to see. In the year following, we had no further activity relative to my barn or missing items, and we actually remained there for 6 more years after the events of that time. What do you think of that, Kev?
That is wild, Bill. But I got to tell you, I'm not sure I'd paint the windows black. You're like, yeah, I don't want this creature around. But yet, if the creature is out there, I'd rather know he's out there.
Yeah.
Than like open up the door to the barn to walk back into the house and be like, oh, hey, how's it going?
Yeah, you know what? It's a little redundant because in his mind, I get what he was doing. He was painting them to keep the flesh.
He's trying to keep him from being attracted.
Right.
To the barn in case he's attracted to the welding, which he appeared to be.
Right. And then after the fact, he went to welding during the daytime.
Yeah, well, that's, like he said, right, for obvious reasons. Good call.
Yeah.
Because if you knew that giant creature was roaming around out there with all your rakes and shovels.
Jeez, you know. But, you know, here, obviously, if you believe this account, the creature is attracted to this human activity. In this case, was this flashing blue light from the welder sparking, illuminating the yard. He must have saw that like a fireworks display from the woods and came over to have a look.
Yeah, just a curious thing. What is that?
Yeah,
right?
Flashing on and off, you know, lighting up the field. And
no, totally weird.
Yeah,
totally
just
weird.
Very bizarre, you know. And
awesome account, though.
Yeah,
awesome.
And you know, we've heard this before. With the things in the yard go missing, tools, this freaking wheelbarrow moved. I mean, obviously it's not using the wheelbarrow. It's not going to farm or dig a ditch, but it took the wheelbarrow and moved it away. Now, was it trying to let on that I'm here, or was it just doing something weird, moving it? It's hard to say, you know. I mean, we have no idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Cool. Very cool.
Interesting stuff, man. So there you have
and
it.
That was near Herkimer, New York, right?
Yeah, they moved from Buffalo to Herkimer or thereabouts.
Right.
And this is where, you know, the sighting occurred, you know. But these areas of downstate and upstate New York, people think there's nothing going on there. They're kooky. I had that security guard show me that footprint from regionally the same area a couple of months ago. I told you I was watching that show about large cats in America.
Yeah.
And they had sightings of cougars and panthers in that area. So listen, the thought that things can't live around there or survive around there is just baloney. There's plenty for everybody, including Bigfoot.
Yep, cool.
Yep.
Very cool.
So there you have it.
I love it. That is a very cool account.
Yeah, so what do we got in our letters from our listeners?
Yeah, we got some good listener mail. First off, I'm going to mention a letter coming in from Vinny in North Carolina, who writes us a fair amount. We love hearing from you, Vinny. Vinny sent us a couple of notes along the way letting us know about the initial obelisk sighting and then the second one in California and the one in Romania. So we're following along too, Vinny, but really appreciate the input and keep the input coming, and Vinny signs his mail, your field reporter. So we love it, Vinny. We got to run into you here in North Carolina one of these days.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and the next one comes in from Mike. And Mike lives in that same area, Bill, of New York that you're talking about in Dutchess County. I think that's right around there in downstate.
Uh-huh.
And he writes in, hey, guys, just wanted to say I love the podcast, have been catching up, and every show is better than the last. My brother Joe and I are true believers and have been since the days of In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy. Mm-hmm. We are in Dutchess County, New York. We have never had a sighting personally, but there have been a few in the area. I have heard howls recently, and I'm convinced it could be the big guy.
Yeah.
Keep up the great work, and we keep packing more gun than we think we're going to need.
That's a good
All
man.
All the best, Mike. And I mean, it is December, Bill, so when he talks about the big guy, he's not talking about Santa, is he?
No.
Okay.
No. And speaking of packing more gun, one of the fellas I was talking to the other day has quite a collection of firearms. And amongst other things, he told me he carries a .38 snub-nosed revolver. And when he goes out, shall we say, for a walk, he has, I think he said, a .452 Ruger. It's like a grizzly cannon. He said if you shoot it, your wrist will hurt you for days.
Nice.
I love that stuff, man. You know, and it always reminds me of Clint, good old Clint and Dirty Harry.
Oh, yeah.
This is a .44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world. Then he asked that guy, you got to ask yourself, do I feel lucky?
Oh, yeah. Well, he's like, I know what you're thinking in all the excitement. Was it 5 or was it 6?
Of course, you wouldn't ask a Bigfoot that same question.
No.
Oh, my God.
Oh, man, it's good stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff. All right, and our next letter comes in from Deb in Alaska, one of my favorite places. And Deb writes, hi, fellas. I listen to a number of podcasts, and I must say yours is different than most. I assume she means better, Bill.
Yeah. Different is left to interpretation, Deb.
But she goes on to write, you remind me of the Click and Clack brothers from Car Talk. Funny guys, all of you. I just want to say I'm enjoying your podcast. You both have so much information on whatever subject you're talking about. Thanks for all your hard work, Deb.
Nice. Well,
and thanks, Deb. We have heard that a lot, that it reminds them of the Boston duo of Click and Clack, which was, probably, well, who knows, but one of my favorite radio shows going back. They've retired now. I think you can still download their recordings as a podcast. But I used to listen to it. It was on like 11 a.m. each Sunday morning on WSHU out of Connecticut. And the two Boston brothers, supposedly they graduated from MIT. So they're super smart, but car mechanics and just fun. So it's a nice compliment to hear that because they were always having a good time.
Yeah, and, Deb, thanks for being different and contacting us.
Difference, okay. I think.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. All right, we got another one coming in.
Yeah.
So this is from Steve in Oregon. Not Oregon, Bill.
You mean Oregon?
Oregon. He said, you read my account back in episode 48, I believe. Aha. I'm writing in regards to your recent podcast discussing the cattle mutilations in eastern Oregon.
Yeah.
A coworker of mine has a friend in eastern Oregon that had a couple of photos shared to him by his friend that was archery hunting in northeastern Oregon. Mm-hmm. My coworker passed them on to me, and these photos were disturbing. The story was that this hunter had walked from camp in the same general direction for several days and had not noticed anything out of the ordinary.
Right.
But on one trip back through the area, he came upon this dead cow. It had not been dead too long, but bloating had started. The lips all around the face had been precisely cut off all around, exposing just the teeth and gum line. It also had been sliced across the belly, but not cut through into the guts. There was no blood. Said they thought it had been drained. Apparently contacted the authorities, and the FBI ended up on the scene. They actually put up some trail cameras and monitored the carcass for some time. I guess there were vultures and other predators that came to the carcass but would not touch it and left it. Pretty weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
take care, Steve.
Yeah, I spoke to this fellow, and we had a lengthy conversation. But a reminder, my friend, you're going to send the pictures out to me, the still shots, so please still do that. I haven't received them as of yet. Cool. I wanted to see them. He asked that we not post them, but I haven't received them yet anyway, so that's a moot point.
Yeah.
But
we won't post them, though. We only post stuff that folks want us to post.
That's right. Interesting, though, in Oregon.
Hey, nice job. Man.
Yeah,
nice job.
Yeah. Well, I'm a little different. I'm a little different, honey child. I like to wear quarter-length boots.
As long as you're not wearing tights tucked in them and your underwear outside of the tights.
Oh, my goodness. I'm visualizing.
I'm just saying, that was quite a look for the vintage Batman and
I'm
Robin.
visualizing that right now, and I got to shake it off.
Well, I tell you, Bill, I don't know if I told you this, but I think it was last Christmas, my daughter gave me the full DVD set of Batman and Robin, the vintage stuff. And I'll tell you what, that is laugh out loud funny.
Yeah.
Those guys were way ahead of their time, except for in the wardrobe department.
Yeah. But anyways, getting back to cattle mutilations in Oregon, these things happen way more often than people will ever know. And like the fella said I was talking to, it'll never make the headlines of the newspaper. It's just like swept under the rug, much like the Bigfoot phenomena or any other high strangeness that's going on. And it just boggles my mind why and who thinks it's inappropriate to print such data and let the people have at it, even if they want to laugh at it as being like a comical event. Let them do it, but put it out there so that the general population can read and know about what's going on and make their own judgment call.
No doubt about it.
You know, it's a weird thing, man. Why? You know, I've said this before, and I'll say it today. You know, my wife from Central America, the Spanish television networks that we have on periodically, they have all kinds of strange things in their news broadcasts. And the same people that are telling you about, you know, whatever, will break into the segment about a flying humanoid and or UFOs sighted over Mexico City, or whatever it may be. I don't understand why all this stuff has to be censored or why they feel it needs to be censored. You know what I mean, Kim?
Yeah, I don't know.
Very bizarre.
Good. All right, and our last letter comes in from Keith. And Keith writes, I listen to your podcast weekly since January of 2020. I'm not a believer in the myth of Bigfoot. I can, however, believe that there could be primates living in our forests that have not been identified or may have been released by irresponsible owners or a disgruntled circus employee. I'm sure one of you have been down to Cherry Log, Georgia. The Bigfoot Museum there is awesome. My son and nephew had a ball. If anyone is on the fence, they need to go see some of the evidence in person. It was amazing to see up close what we hear about on your show and what we see on the TV. I still think there is some truth to this, but not what is being sold. Please keep up the good work and stories. It adds to my imagination, especially when I go out in the woods at night.
Yeah.
So, Keith, I haven't been to the museum in Cherry Log, Georgia yet, but a lot of my neighbors here have been, and whenever they go, they bring me something back. You know, so I got a few T-shirts and a sign and stuff like that from that museum, and they told me it's fantastic. I just, although like I was in Atlanta on business earlier this week, I just never get a chance to get off of the beaten track out there, but I'll have to do it one of these days.
Yeah, very interesting. You know, and something that just popped into my head, Kev, while you were reading that, I was thinking about all the mention of Leonard Nimoy again.
Oh, yeah.
You know how many people were impacted by that show In Search of?
Bill, I vividly remember him, you know, doing the, you know, reviewing the Patty Gimlin, you know, the Patterson Gimlin film. I remember him doing those desert paintings, right, and crop circles and all kinds of stuff. Like, I mean, it was well done that it stuck with me this long.
Yeah. And you know what? Getting back to the unpublished events in Oregon and other places, what is wrong with well done? Nimoy did it. People were fascinated with it. They were left to discern one way or another whether they believed it or not. And what is wrong with something well done and presented to the public?
You're saying related to the news media.
Yeah.
I mean, we certainly have some great shows, more and more, on cryptids and other oddities, and they're getting great ratings. You know, it's not just us tuning in. Like, a lot of folks are tuning in and watching these shows, you know, whether it's Josh Gates, Expedition Unknown, and stuff like that, all of the Bigfoot shows, you know.
Yep. Yeah,
I mean they're cool. You know, most of them are really good, and of course we're waiting for the next season of Skinwalker Ranch. That was fantastic last year, their first season.
And if you're a science freak, it was completely scientifically based. All they were doing was experiments.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
You know,
so that's it for this week, Bill. Thanks everybody for listening and writing in, and thank you for all those 5-star reviews. If you haven't left a review, or even if you haven't left one in a while, please leave us a 5-star review today as soon as you finish listening. And those reviews are super important because it is the main tool that brings more listeners to our podcast. And as we get more listeners, we're able to improve the quality of the podcast. So keep those 5-star reviews coming and stay safe out there.
Yeah, and folks, go out there and buy a couple of books as stocking stuffers. and do Mr. Bill a favor. And by the way, if you find yourself walking around the woods in Herkimer, New York, remember one thing. Always carry more gun than you think you're gonna need. Sleep tight.